Welcome to Silver Bar Stacker, folks. Hope everybody's doing well and having a happy Tuesday. It's TD Tuesday, folks, and on the last video we had actually unboxed this wonderful 10-ounce TD Bank bar, but we hadn't actually fully opened it, and so I had promised that on Tuesday we were gonna, because it was TD Tuesday, we were gonna open up this 10-ounce bar. And so let's crack open into this, and we'll actually go on to allenglehart.com and check out some of the mintage as well. Just so we can see how rare this bar is and just take a closer look to see how good condition it is and stuff. I've got my big box of Scotiabank and TD Bank vintage pieces. I kind of have a collector's obsession when it comes to Scotiabank and TD Bank pieces. I started kind of getting into the TD Bank kind of generic stuff because I thought it was like very cool. I think one of the most viewed videos on my channel, just by chance, I don't know why that's the most viewed video on my channel, but just by chance, is TD full stack F banks. And I said that at the time because I was kind of like annoyed because I had really bought a lot of generic TD Bank stuff, right? And so I was like, you know what, I'm just doing a full stack video of all this stuff because I have so much TD Bank generic stuff. I had been buying a lot of this TD Bank, these TD Bank generic pieces from sellers in Canada, and so when I had done that, it was difficult to kind of get those pieces anywhere else. It was mainly Canadian sellers selling them, and they were kind of probably reselling them at a little bit of profit, right? But later I came to find out that those same TD Bank generic pieces could be bought right on the bank, and you still can go on the bank on Canada. And if you're a TD Bank customer in Canada, I think you can pretty easily kind of go purchase probably a limited amount of that generic bullion, and it's quite well priced. When I did the conversion from Canadian dollars to US dollars, the price was pretty good. And I was like, these pieces are pretty cool, but I definitely paid a little bit too much for them because they're just generic pieces. And then I started to kind of go down the rabbit hole of, holy cow, you know what? There's a lot of TD Bank vintage pieces out there, Engelhard and Johnson Matthey. And so I started to kind of go down that deep rabbit hole of, oh, well, there's this TD Bank piece, and then there's that TD Bank piece. But then they have the same piece by Engelhard, and then the same piece by Johnson Matthey. So that's kind of the issue. I wouldn't say it's an issue, but that's part of what comes with. If you are kind of getting into vintage, you're going to go down multiple layers of rabbit holes. There's pressed, there's poured, there's small denomination, there's high denomination, there's original wrapping versus not original wrapping, there's low mintage versus high mintage. It just goes on and on and on to the point where that collector obsession will reach $700 for a gram of silver, right? So that's just something to be very cognizant about when you get into collectibles, because I was talking to one of my suppliers from Florida yesterday, and he was telling me like, okay, vintage is, I mean, he's been buying and selling for going on over 20 years now. Okay, so he knows a thing or two, right? Compared to maybe somebody like me. So he was telling me that things kind of go in seasonal waves, but he's saying that by and large, if you're looking for a good long-term investment and you kind of are a knowledgeable buyer, vintage is the way to go, no-brainer, right? Long-term. What do we mean by long-term? Long-term, like as Savage Stacker says, it means something you're not going to go turn around and sell in 2 months, right? You're trying to hold that on, you're trying to preserve value, you're trying to hold it for the long term, right? And so then we started talking about how, it's not that your stack should be fully made of vintage, or that your stack should fully be made of generics, or that your stack should be fully made of doomsday fractional prepping stuff, or it should be fully of government minted bullion. What he was saying is that there is a proper space for each of the types of bullion, and he was saying that, if you're not, like Savage Stacker saying, if you're not turning around and having to sell it in 2 months, right? Well, you're looking to sell it in a year, in 5 years, long term, maybe in 50 years. Maybe you never sell it and you pass it on to the next generation, right? For those types of things, Vintage is great as long as you can educate the next generation, as long as you have a network where you can sell that in if you need to in a crunch at a fair price. But vintage will actually has multiple layers of value to rely on for further appreciation, hypothetically speaking, right? But that doesn't mean that generics don't have a place in everybody's stack, right? The purpose of generics are, I wouldn't say this is the purpose, but the added layer of value of generics is that you're buying close to spot, you're selling close to spot. And you can also sell that piece, right? If you have a generic brick here, I can take that almost anywhere and get near spot for it. Whereas if I have a very highly collectible piece, that's not the case at all, right? And so the added layer of value for a generic piece is that I'm buying it close to spot, and I have no problem selling it close to spot because I'm not attached to it. So that serves the purpose in your stack as like, okay, if I'm ever in a crunch, I'm not planning to be in a crunch, but if I'm ever in a crunch, let's say for example, okay, eBay withheld $30,000 from me. That's a crunch. Okay, if I'm in a crunch, what do? Do I go and liquidate all my vintage? I should hope not, right? I should hope that I have a big stack of generics that I can rely on to go liquidate at some LCS so that I'm not in a bind and I can just continue business as normal, right? So that's what it comes down to. If I was over leveraged fully in vintage, then I'd be in a big problem, right? So everybody needs to understand what purpose vintage serves, what purpose government minted bullion serves. If you live in a certain state or another state or another country, you may have different legal repercussions, right? There may be tax things. Who knows? There's so many considerations that go into your decision of how to stack your personal stack, but ultimately it comes down to what are your needs and what are you comfortable with, right? And what is it that your personal situation is, okay? So that was a big rant. Just wanted to make that point clear before anybody goes kind of down the deep rabbit hole of vintage, right? And so it's TD Tuesdays. Why do we have TD Tuesdays? Because SBS is obsessed with collecting TD Bank stuff, right? Be it generics or vintage. Okay, so these are just some of the stack packs we actually have available for sale related to maybe Scotiabank, TD Bank. So these are two Scotiabank pieces just as an example, right? And this is a Scotiabank in the original wrapping. This one is produced by Johnson Matthey. And back here you'll see that it's only 500 minted. It's a 5-ounce bar, 500 minted. That's pretty cool. Now over here, you got two sequential 1-ounce Scotiabank bars. But these aren't generics. Everything in this box is vintage, right? Vintage, Scotiabank, and TD Bank, Engelhard, and Johnson Matthey. These are sequential cereals, and these are Engelhards. Now each of these is 1,000 minted, so these are very, very difficult to come by. Probably one of my favorite 1-ounce bars, I would have to say. I just love this bar, the Scotiabank Engelhard bar, 1,000 minted. It's a tier 2 bar. And I'm really, really excited about these because I'm a big collector of Scotiabank, and so I've got sequentials in the 1-ounce, I've got sequentials in the 10-ounce. The 10-ounce of the Scotiabanks are only 250 minted, so that's a tier 1 bar. Now, here's some Johnson Matthey vintage stuff. Now, this one right here is a TD Bank. Now, TD Bank variety on the Johnson Mattheys, they vary. So this one is an 18,000 minted variety of the TD Bank Johnson Matthey bars. And this right here, these are also 18,000 minted, but this is sealed right here. 2 sealed. And are they sequential as well? 4, 8, 3, 6, 5, 3, 6, 6, yeah. Sealed and sequential right here. So sealed and sequential and just sealed. Cool. I'm not gonna go through the entire box here, but there's quite a bit. Can maybe take a deeper dive on that later. Let's take a closer look at this. Now, if you go on allenglehard.com, you'll find that there's actually two versions of the 10-ounce TD Bank bar, and so they're both tier 1, actually. They're both tier 1 bars. And a tier 1 bar, according to Allen basically means that it is a bar that there's less than 500 of them that exist. No more than 500 that exist. Okay, and so the Johnson Matthey bars, this is something Skull Stacks was telling me. He was saying that Johnson Matthey, because he knew that I really liked Engelhard. So he was saying that Johnson Matthey generally, they have like a wider variety of rarer bars that generally kind of, a lot of them have kind of lower mintages. So you'll be able to find a lot more unique pieces, I guess what he was saying, with Johnson Matthey. And that's very subjective, but I think like if you actually did the math and you went through and you counted every single unique piece, you'd probably find, I wouldn't be surprised if you'd find that Johnson Matthey has more rarer pieces and just maybe more variety of pieces in general. Now, this bar right here, the TD Bank bar, it's got a TD Bank stamp on the back. This bar comes in two different varieties. There's one of them that's 500 minted. Very, very rare. Like this bar is 500 minted as well. That's a tier 1 bar. Okay, so there's one that's 500 minted, but there's also one that's 250 minted. So literally twice as rare as that. Okay, and so the difference that you'll see actually is this one right here, by the way, this isn't the original factory seal, which is unreal. So this right here, you'll see that it says fine silver 999, right? Now, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, so these are also TD Bank bars, right? 10 ounce. But here you'll see, all right, so this one that we just picked up also in the original factory seal. In fact, all three of these are in the original factory seal. So this one that we just picked up, it's got this sort of a logo right here where it's just everything in 2 lines. Fine silver 999 in 2 lines. But this one you'll notice here, fine silver 999. It's in 3 lines there. And this is actually the more common bar. This is 500 minted, and these are 250 minted. Okay, so this is what happens. Collector obsession, you start kind of getting into the different varieties, and it's like, oh, I like TD Bank generic bars, let me collect every freaking variety. So you gotta be mindful of your budget, right, when you're doing this. And I didn't go and buy all of this overnight. It's like, oh, I like that one. I save up for it and grab it, right? And so that's what it is. Hope you enjoyed the deeper dive on the TD Bank 10 ounce. Cheers.